Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to your Calendars franchise mode here in NHL 25. So in last episode, if you did not catch it, we simulated more of the season, and this team has started to figure out their game a bit. We are 36, 22, and 4, and on our last 10 games we're 4, 4, and 2, so it's been still a little bit of an inconsistent season, but I do think our team has finally found its game a little bit more so than it did in the first half of the season. As you can see, our offense is still not necessarily the greatest. We are 16th in goals for and 19th on the power play. Meanwhile, we're still a very good defensive team, though, at 7th in goals against and 10th on the penalty kill. So there has been some positives to take away from this final season so far, but obviously still hoping that this team can somehow find a way to get into the playoffs again and obviously get pretty far, because this is the last season of this series. So I don't really know for sure if we're going to be making any trades yet this year's deadline. I do kind of like still some things about this team offensively, so I don't feel like it's not necessarily something we need to really address is full on getting our offense better. But there has been like some decent players stepping up, like Crane's having a good year despite being 38 years old at this point. Ragnarsson's been good, but you could definitely see we're not scoring a crazy ton of goals. But we do have like guys in different lineups setting scoring goals as well, like the first line and stuff like that. The third line, the second line have all been scoring goals. It's just more that they aren't getting a lot of points. But I don't think that's a huge issue, but it's definitely something we could address if we wanted to get better at it. Obviously, our defensive play has been really good this season, so I don't think it's something we really need to fully address there. Both goaltenders have been on their game, and then the defensemen as well have been on their game too. The main thing I think that has maybe made us maybe not as good of an offensive team this year, I feel like, is because Holmstrom has missed a ton of games, but obviously now he's back and fully healthy, so maybe if he was healthy all year, our offense would have been better than 16th right now, but I'm not too sure if that's the main reason why this team is doing that kind of weird this season. So I don't know if we're going to make any changes in this last season, but we will definitely explore the opportunity to. There was some players I was looking at the end of last episode. We might go and take a look and see what it would cost to get those type of guys. If it's too high, we probably won't do it. If it's a reasonable price, maybe we will do it, and that way we could at least just bolster our offense a little bit more. But anyways, with that said, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will get into maybe making some trades depending if it's necessary, and we will simulate the rest of this last final regular season. So the first comment is from Samarataku. It says, keep the team the same and see where it goes. And that's exactly what I'm thinking as well. I think keeping this roster the same might not be a bad idea, because there wasn't really a lot of high-end players out there when we were looking on the trading block that could help bolster our offense even more so. Like, if there was one, it would cost us way more than probably we'd want to give up. So from a realism standpoint, I don't think we're going to make much moves, but if we do make any moves, it might be a small trade, because you can see like our winger depth at the moment. If we wanted to upgrade our forward group, we basically would have to move somebody out on our forward group, and I'm not really too sure on who I would move out of this team. Like, we do have guys in the minors as well that are good enough for the NHL, like Terry, Menino, Hybert, Lysak, even Grummett, Morris, Blanchard. Like, there's a lot of guys that could come up for us in the playoffs. Like, we have good depth, but we don't have high-end depth is the thing. So if we are to upgrade an area, we might have to trade somebody in the minors and or the NHL roster just to get somebody in, which might end up being a little bit too costly for us. So we'll see if we do decide to make a trade, but at least at this moment, I think we aren't going to, but it depends on what those trade offers would be like to get somebody in to help our offense core out. And the last and final comment is from Ice Attack, who says, maybe try to acquire someone to help out with offense, but don't do anything that you've given up, you have to give up a lot of assets for. And yeah, I think that's maybe the approach if we do make a trade, is obviously we do a trade, but it would have to be one of those kind of low event trades where we don't give up a ton in exchange. So let's go to those players we were looking at the end of last episode to see what they would cost us right now. And if they would cost us too much, there's likely no chance we would make a trade. If they're low value though, we might make them. So let's go to St. Louis first and foremost. I think that's where Jaskalainen was. Or maybe it was a different team. Oh, no, it was St. Louis. I did remember right. Jaskalainen was one of these guys that was kind of intriguing to me. The only thing with him is he's already 36 years old. He is a good goal scorer. 21 goals this season. Had a 50-goal season in his career at one point in time. He would be a good player to bring in. He's never won a Stanley Cup, hasn't really got far in the playoffs. I feel like he would be probably the one I would be most interested in bringing in, but I don't really know where I would slot him in is the thing. We'd have to give up a roster player probably to bring him in, and he's already 36. Like I said, he could be a retirement in this last season, so how much would he cost us right now on an open block? Hybrid in a third, which Hybrid's currently in the AHL, so that's not really a bad offer. Let's actually remove my face so you guys can see all the details with the cap and hit, but I think that would be not a bad deal. But we would need somebody on our NHL roster to get probably sent down to the AHL otherwise. But that's not really that bad. Girard in a third isn't bad either, but Girard's a good defensive forward for that fourth line. I prefer probably not to do that. Trotter in a third. Trotter's been a good offensive kind of guy on the third line for the most part. Yeah, he would probably be okay to be moved out, but I don't really know about that. Lyzak's in the AHL as well in the third, and then there's also a third and Terry. The third round picks are for 2050, which is kind of funny saying 2050, but that's interesting. I feel like most of those trades are actually deals I would be willing to make for Jääskeläinen, but like I said, I'd have to send somebody down on waivers in order to complete those deals, I think. So let's go back for a second here and see if there's anybody else, which I know there was one guy in Toronto that used to play for us, that being Lockhart. How much would Lockhart cost us? Way much more value for him. A second rounder, Ekblad in a seventh, too much value. A Smith, the fifth, and a sixth ain't gonna happen. And then Karostin, Ekblad in a fifth. I can't get rid of a defenseman, to be honest, like that. So, yeah, I don't think Lockhart's the guy. I think if we are gonna trade for somebody, it would be Jääskeläinen to bring in his goal scoring. Now, like I said, we would have to send somebody down to the AHL or basically trade somebody on a four group to get Jääskeläinen in. If we put Jääskeläinen in the lineup, he's basically a little bit of a younger version of Harris. So Harris right now is listed as a scoring forward. I do like Harris. Dempsey would probably, he's listed as a third scoring forward too. Hasn't been as good this season as in years past, in my opinion, but I would probably have to think about moving out from Schmaltz, which Schmaltz is a decent player at times. Last year he was a really good player, but he's definitely not doing as good anymore. And isn't he signed for this last year? Yeah, he is, and then he's a UFA. Not moving Jensen to the AHL either, because he's a good young player. These guys would probably have to go through waivers, one of them. Like, we'd probably have to waive, like, Hauser Markstrom, which isn't ideal. So I probably would have to actually trade away a roster player. And if I had to trade away a roster player, I'd maybe be leaning towards Schmaltz, but he is a third-line checking forward. So is he? I don't know if he's okay with his ice time or not, but definitely not getting a ton of ice time. It would be an upgrade getting Jääskeläinen, but then we'd have to move like Harris down to the fourth line. Dempsey would move to the third line. Actually, no, we'd probably put Jääskeläinen in there. So it'd just be Harris and Jääskeläinen in these bottom parts. Schmaltz is a two-way forward, which I feel like is probably better suited for a fourth line. Jääskeläinen is more of a power forward. This is a tough one, man. Jensen doesn't go through waivers, so hypothetically, if I wanted to, I could send him down for the rest of the season. But I feel like Jensen's been a good rookie that I don't think it's a good idea to send him down. He's got 15 points. He's an even 0. Like, he hasn't been bad defensively. Has a couple shorthanded points as well. Like, I could send him down, but I feel like having him in the NHL for his full rookie season is not a bad idea either. I don't really know where Jääskeläinen would fit into this team, to be honest. Like, I would probably have to move out somebody like Trotter, who actually is listed as a second-line forward, so his ice time is not very good. He is a big part of our offense kind of right now, but yeah, I don't know about Trotter. He's an interesting one. Like, he's not the most insane player in the world. Playoff-wise, he hasn't been insane the last 2 years either. So, would I trade Trotter because he's probably low on morale due to ice time? And then I could move Harris over to this part and put Jääskeläinen in this spot. Trying to think if that's a good lateral move, because they did actually want Trotter as well in the trade for Jääskeläinen, and so it could be a good trade for both teams. Trotter is signed for 2 more years after this year. Jääskeläinen is a pending free agent. Obviously, since this is last season, nobody's going to care about contracts that extend past the season, but so this could be an interesting offer. So let's go back and explore the Trotter option, because like I said, even though he's been a good offensive player for us, maybe downgrading ourselves to a veteran instead that could also win faceoffs really good isn't a bad idea. So if we go back to centers and go back to the St. Louis Blues, or was he a right wing center? No, he's a center slash right winger. Let's go back to the Trotter offer and kind of compare the two players a little bit more. So basically, we would be having ourselves our guy that's listed as a second line forward getting dealt for a guy listed as a third line scoring forward. So there is a bit of a downgrade there, but based on ice time, Jääskeläinen would be getting his ice time he deserves. Trotter would be going to a team that maybe he gets better ice time. I'm not too sure. And then you can see based on player stats, basically 15 goals for Trotter as a guy that's averaging 12 minutes a game. Jääskeläinen's getting 21 minutes right now, and that's why he has 21 goals. So he does have a lot more ice time than Trotter does right now. So Jääskeläinen might be getting played in the top 6 in St. Louis, and that's the main reason why he's actually scoring goals and all that. If we look at their attributes, you can see technically Jääskeläinen's better defensively, which is interesting in terms of awareness. And he's better in face-offs, but the shot blocking and stick checking definitely goes to Trotter. If we do a comparison also in like shooting categories, it's definitely Jääskeläinen who's better shooting-wise, but the offensive awareness is better on Trotter. This is a tough one to compare to. Let's see. So more goals on Jääskeläinen, more assists by 1 only on Trotter. So technically Jääskeläinen with a lot more ice time is doing a little bit better, but not by much. If we go down to here, Jääskeläinen might fit our 4th line. Trotter is a good fit, actually, for that 3rd line right now. I think I'm leaning towards keeping Trotter on this one. Obviously, I could move other people instead, but I feel like I kind of like the way our bottom 6 is already set up, almost in a way. Like, can Jääskeläinen bring us something we don't have in terms of goal scoring? Probably. But he's also an old guy that's on the decline, likely. And like I said, he is getting a lot of ice time in St. Louis. So that might be the main reason why he's producing still good. Like, 3rd line for us with maybe minimal power play time, maybe his production goes way down. So I don't think it's a good idea, potentially. I feel like I would prefer to not trade for him. If we go to view lines right now, I'm pretty sure St. Louis probably has some in the top 6 and first line power play and all that. Yeah, they have him as the first line center there in St. Louis, and he's only on 40 points in 61 games. So from that standpoint, he's getting first line ice time. He's also on the first line power play. No, he's not actually, surprisingly. He's on the 2nd power play, but first line ice time, which obviously by comparison to Trotter, Trotter's 3rd line has around the same amount of points. And I believe Trotter's barely getting power play time or not even getting power play time. So I think from that standpoint, Jääskeläinen could also be getting carried by this 89 overall type of player for the most part. And also maybe Ekman too, for an instance. I don't think I'm going to make any trades just because of that. Like, I just feel like he's getting carried kind of by Gerber and also the fact that he has more ice time. He comes to this organization, he would not be getting a lot of ice time. Apparently, they also do actually have a major injury to a guy named Klassen. So technically, Jääskeläinen is an 81, usually plays between an 85 and an 89. Which, obviously, with our team, he'd be playing next to people more his overall, which isn't necessarily as good. So I think even though I like the looks of Jääskeläinen, I just think there's no need for a trade at this point in the season. Like, yes, we could upgrade our offense and do that type of deal, but I think it wouldn't really necessarily change anything too much because Trotter is getting way less ice time, and he's producing like right around the same for his ice time as a guy that's getting first line ice time and power play time. So I think we're going to keep it the same and hope that that's good enough to get this team into the playoffs. So with that said, I think we're going to simulate a day past the deadline. We'll look at the trades that happened just in case there's anything interesting there. But I think this team is the team we're going to run with. And I really hope that we stay healthy, because if we don't stay healthy, that's one thing I'm a little concerned about. But there's guys in the AHL we could call up if we really want to. So let's go as a buyer, and we'll go continue simulating for the last time as we pass by the trade deadline. Now, I wonder if there's going to be any waivers players. Doesn't seem like it. Oh, interesting. Was expecting maybe some interesting players getting put on waivers, but not the case. So, no trades in this final season might not be a good idea, might be a good idea, but let's see what deals went down, see if any former players got dealt that I recognize. As of right now, I don't think I see anybody I recognize. That Naslin guy in Buffalo got dealt, or Toronto got dealt to Edmonton. Aside from that, there's definitely players that we just saw on the trading block in last episode, but I think staying pat is probably not a bad idea for his team at this point. Wow, okay, so Jimmy Smithson, who was that elite goalie that was in Columbus, he got dealt to the Calgary Flames. He was their starting goalie last year when we played them in the playoffs. They also get Lee for Letowski, which I don't know who Letowski is, but Smithson was an elite goalie, I think, so that's kind of interesting that he gets moved out in favor of Moore, I believe. Aside from that, any other people that we recognize here? Lockhart got dealt to New Jersey from Toronto, so there is a chance that Lockhart might end up playing at some point in the playoffs if New Jersey finds a way to make it, but kind of interesting seeing Lockhart get dealt back to our division. Toronto gets back some guy named Clarkson in 2/3. So maybe we could have got Lockhart back if we wanted to, but I think it would have been a little bit costly for us. Aside from that, Popov got dealt from LA to Minnesota, so that's one of our former players. Interesting. And aside from that, some guy named Lupul got dealt to Philadelphia, which makes me think of Joffrey Lupul. All right. So those are the trades that went down on this final trade deadline. Now comes the question, is this team good enough to make a playoff spot, or did I make a bad decision by not making a trade in this final season? Let's take it a little bit slow just because this is the final season and we want to make sure we get into the playoffs if possible. So let's do 3 games. We have 2 of them against Boston, 1 against Ottawa. Can we find ways to win after the deadline? As there is a 1 player on waivers, Christopher Ilyanuk from Minnesota. I don't really need him. He's an okay depth defenseman, but still don't need him. Boston is a 6-2 loss. Yikes. And Ashton gets injured immediately after the deadline. This is where Jaskalainen would have been good, because Jaskalainen could win faceoffs and all that. But we suffer an injury right off the hop, which is not great. It's only for a week or so, so it's not that bad. But it's still not a great time for an injury at this point in the season. We do beat Ottawa 3-0, so that's a nice game, but then lose to the Bruins again. I'm surprised that we lost to the Bruins 2 times because they're below 500. Meanwhile, Ottawa is a better team. Actually, no, they're right around the same amount of wins and all that, so never mind. But a little bit of a weird stretch here. Let's go through 2 games here. We got Tampa and Columbus, and then we have another game coming against Columbus too. Can we beat Tampa? Yes, we can. Columbus is a loss. Okay, so a little bit more inconsistent here so far in March. We are still, I think, in a wild card spot as Ashton has returned, which is good. We'll just get him into the lineup. House was getting second line ice time, which is not necessarily a great spot for him, but at least he was getting some playing time, so I don't mind that too much. Let's go with that, and boom. So, all right, so 38, 25, and 4. We are in the first wildcard spot. The Devils are in the second wildcard spot. They did just bring in Lockhart, so we got to be a little bit aware about that. The Rangers are one of the only teams that we need to really worry about. The Blue Jackets are kind of close to us too, I guess. Caps maybe a little bit, but as long as we keep on playing good, we should be able to hopefully get this first wildcard spot locked down. So let's go through 4 games. We got Columbus, the Rangers. So both these teams are bottom of our division right now. New Jersey, who's chasing us in that last wildcard spot, and then the Dallas Stars as well. So let's go through this busy week and see if we could at least get 2 or 3 wins this week. Columbus, 3-1 loss. Rangers, 5-2 win. Okay. New Jersey is a 3-2 win, and Dallas is a 3-1 win. Okay, that's a very good week. Obviously, it started off bad, but then we beat a team that's obviously not doing too well. We beat a team that's kind of close to us, and then we beat a team from the Western Conference. So that's a solid week. That does still have us as the first wildcard team, but we're only 2 points back of the Hurricanes. Now, they do have games in hand on us, but we're in a pretty solid spot considering we're only 4 points back and 6 points back of the top 2 spots in the division. So despite us being a wildcard team, we're actually one of the better wildcard teams probably out there at the moment. So we have 2 more games this week, Carolina and St. Louis. So this game against Carolina would be nice to win. Of course, they will still have games in hand on us, but it would be nice to give ourselves a victory over them. St. Louis is also actually a pretty solid team in the Western Conference. Looks like they're figuring their game out a bit. So let's go through those two games and see if we can win them. I'm kind of surprised that St. Louis is actually doing that good, though, in terms of the season, just because Jääskeläinen didn't really have a lot of points. And there is a nice win over them 2-0, but we did lose to Carolina. So they do also improve their record a little bit. And technically they've jumped up now to second place in the Metro because of that. They do have a game in hand on Pittsburgh, and they have 2 games in hand on us. But we're only 4 points back of those teams. So we're literally right there for potentially winning the Metro still, even though we are a wildcard team at the moment. Our division's just super, super strong. We're lucky, though, because the Rangers have jumped into the wildcard spot, knocking out the Devils. But we are 9 points up on that second wildcard spot. So we're very close to probably clinching within the next little bit because we're so far ahead at this point. All right. So we got another game coming up here against Pittsburgh. We have a game against Montreal, and then obviously there's more in April. But how are we looking in terms of playoffs? Nothing clinched yet, but maybe soon. The Hurricanes have now taken exactly the exact same amount of games played as us, so now it becomes a bit more even, the Metro, because of the games played. Let's go through these games against Pittsburgh and Montreal. Pittsburgh's above us in this division. Montreal is not doing too well this season, so maybe at least one win here would be good. Game against Pittsburgh is a 3-2 overtime win, and then we win 3-2 in regulation over Montreal. Those are 2 big wins. We have not clinched the playoff spot yet, but the Hurricanes and Penguins already have, which means we're very close to, as is the Flyers. And then the Rangers and Devils and Blue Jackets are all going to be fighting for a wild card spot, because actually even some teams, I guess, technically in the Atlantic, but the Metro seems to be always a lot more tough right now. Technically, teams that like the Rangers, who are in the wild card spot, would actually be first place in the Atlantic if they were in the Atlantic division. So we're lucky that our division's kind of tight up until, I guess, that last wildcard spot. So, all right, we have not clinched the playoff spot yet, but we should be within the next 1 to 2 wins, I believe. This first one's against Toronto, who's not in a playoff spot. Yeah, Toronto's not in a playoff spot, but they're fighting for one. So if we could beat them, that would be nice. Let's see if we could beat them here and get that playoff spot locked up. We do. We do. Or we may have got at least 1 point, but our coach has a conversation, and he's going to congratulate us on clinching a playoff spot. So we do make a playoff spot in this final season, which is awesome. One more chance at that Stanley Cup as we beat them 3-2. So that's 3 straight 3-2 victories for us. We have clinched a playoff spot on 94 points. There's still a chance we could end up winning this division, but I'm kind of hoping maybe more so as a wildcard team, just because if we finish as a wildcard team, maybe that gives us a higher chance to go far in the playoffs. But there's not much point separating first place in this division and wild card, which is insane. And like I said, the Rangers, if they were in the Atlantic, they'd literally be a top 2 team, which is insane. Like, you have some... I'd say the Eastern Conference is pretty damn tight, but obviously the Metro is better than the Atlantic. The Western Conference looks pretty tight as well, maybe. Damn. Yeah, there's some teams out of the playoffs with 83 points, so this is going to be a lot of teams getting upset in terms of not making the playoffs, but let's get through the rest of this. We have Florida and the Rangers. Obviously, we know we've clinched so far, but we don't know if we are going to be the best team in the Metro, the worst team in the Metro that made the playoffs. I don't really know, but there's 2 more wins. This team's on a bit of a heater at the end of the season, which might not be a good thing, because that might also mean we're a first-round exit, but we are still first wild card. But we're only a point back of the Flyers with the same amount of games played, a point back of the Penguins with 1 more game played, and then the Hurricanes are in first place by 2 points, but 1 less game played. So these last few games might decide. This game against Carolina is pretty big. If Carolina beats us there, we probably don't really have a chance to win the division. So like I said, I don't really want to win this division, because I feel like if we end up winning the division, we're going to be an early exit. If we end up somehow staying in this wildcard position, maybe our team's an underdog going into the playoffs. So let's go through the game against Buffalo. Can we beat Buffalo, or is our winning streak going to end? We do beat Buffalo. God damn it. We have jumped into 3rd place, which means we're now in a normal spot. The Flyers have fallen back to the wild card, but they do have a game in hand on us. This is a long winning streak at this point. We have won a total of 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row, I think, near the end of the season. Like I said, I don't want to win that many games near the end of the season because then it usually means your team's not going to be as good in the playoffs. But can we please lose to Carolina here? Because I don't want to win a division at the end of the season. Okay, we lose 8-3, so that's a pretty convincing loss at the end of the season. So I don't think we're going to win our division because of the loss to Carolina. And we have fallen back into a wild card spot. The Flyers have jumped up to second place, the Penguins on third place. So still could be decided that one of these teams is going to fall off a bit. And it comes down to these last few games. If we win both these games, we could probably still win a division, but it's unlikely just because every other team has games left. So I would say that we're probably, if we win these two games, we could finish it easily as a top 3 team. If we lose both these games, obviously we might just be staying in this wildcard spot. So I don't really know where to be, but let's see what happens. First one against the Washington Capitals, who aren't very good. We win against them 3-1. All right, so our only loss in the last little bit has been Carolina, which is interesting. We're on 102 points. We can still jump into being a top 3 team, but it comes down to if Pittsburgh loses the last 2 games and if we win this last game against Tampa. We are not going to be able to finish in the top 2 spots, but I will definitely take that. So can we beat Tampa at the end of the season, or are we going to end the season off on a regulation loss potentially? We do end it off in a regulation loss, 4-1 for Tampa, as we finish in the first wild card spot with 102 points. Let's get every other team done. But we finished 49-29-4, so no 50-win season, but definitely a better year than maybe we were anticipating. There's a couple teams still with games left, apparently. And there you go. Every team is done in terms of simulation. Let's take a look at our team stats here. Actually, let's hide some stuff here, and we're going to go to the standings, and I'm just going to close my eyes so I can't see who leads us in points right now. And bang. All right, so in terms of the entire league, where did we finish? We actually were a top 10 team in the NHL. So despite maybe the circumstance of it being the last year, being an older team, this team really actually did pretty well. We almost came close to winning the President's Trophy, but we lost to Carolina near the end of the season, and that gave Carolina a better chance to win it. But you could definitely see how tough our division was, though, because Carolina, Philly, and Pittsburgh, the top 3 teams, we were the 4th best team in our division, and we finished as a top 10 team as well. And then you have teams that are outside of it afterwards. Columbus found a way to make it back to the playoffs. That's a pretty big surprise. The Rangers missed out in the last day of the season. Damn. Rangers fans aren't going to like that. New Jersey made a trade for Lockhart, and it didn't work out either. So we're probably pretty lucky to be in the playoffs, but at the same time, maybe we have some very good defensive results compared to the rest of the league. But in terms of goals for per game, we did score over 3 goals per game. The Rangers had the best offense, but they missed the playoffs with Guerin. That's actually kind of insane. But on 3.909 goals for per game, we were not the best offensive team, but obviously, like I said, our defensive play is what shines. We were actually tied for the 4th best defensive team in the NHL with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So definitely still more of a defensive team, but if we could find our offensive game a bit in the playoffs, we could definitely do some damage. 12.9% on the power play. So our power play was one of the worst power plays in the league, yet we made the playoffs, just like Toronto and Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the second best team in the NHL, but they had one of the worst power plays. So it doesn't really matter too much that our power play is that bad, I guess. And then from a penalty kill perspective, we had a top 10 penalty kill at 87%. So pretty damn good season for the defensive play. We had 8 shorthanded goals, and our road and home record were very identical almost. So that's pretty good. 8-2 going into the playoffs. I don't know if I like going into the playoffs on that type of note, but you never know. All right, so let's hide some stuff again. We do see that Crane's leading us in points, but I want to go by each position, obviously, just to see who is leading us by centers and all that stuff. So in terms of our player stats here for centers, Mäkinen on 65 points, solid year for Mäkinen. Obviously, he's on the decline. This probably, if there was another year of this, I feel like this would be maybe one of his last seasons, but obviously we won't get to see if he retires or not in the end of the series, unfortunately. But 65 points for him. Ashton on 50 points and a +12, good year for him at the age of 33. Jocelyn on 48 points, and then Jensen on 24 as a rookie. I do like that scoring down the middle because we got 3 20-goal scorers down the middle. They also pick up around 20 to 30 assists. Yeah, all very similar production, I would say. And then for Jensen to have 24 points as a rookie is not too bad, considering he didn't really get a lot of ice time. So definitely would be probably a decent future top 6 forward at some point in time if there was more years left to this franchise mode. From a left wing perspective, Ragnarsson on 66 points, Crane on 66 points. So we had a lot of guys right around tied for team lead in points, which is interesting. 25 goals for Ragnarsson, only 21 for Crane, but Crane doing pretty good for a 38-year-old in my opinion. Kazanov had 59 points, so another very good goal scoring season kind of for him too. 20 goals, a lot of 20 goal scorers. Trotter 47 points. I think that's decent for a third line guy with power play time. Gerard on 26 points, very solid. And then Markstrom only played 2 games with a goal. From a right wing perspective, we had Harris on 42 points, 15 goals for him. 41 points for Dempsey on 15 goals. Schmaltz had 26 points. Definitely not as good as last year, but that's okay. Didn't get any power play time. And then House had an assist in 9 games. So if we look at just our forwards alone, that scoring looks pretty solid. If we look at the goal scoring, we had a total of 6 20-goal scorers this season. So I think that's definitely a positive. Like, our offense wasn't fantastic, but we had a lot of different guys step up. We also had a bunch of guys on 15 goals, more than 10 goals. Like, the only one that didn't have more than 10 goals that played every game was the youngster Jensen. So I think there's definitely some positives on that offensive front. And then from a defensive standpoint, Holmstrom on 35 points in 57 games. Obviously missed a lot due to injury. Hopefully he can stay healthy in the playoffs. Schaefer 26 points in 78 games. Pretty good. Pretty good for him. Smith 21 points. We have Ekblad on 19. Svedberg on 17 and plus 15 as a rookie is really good. And then that Enforcer actually worked out quite well for us. He worked actually really nice. 13 points as an Enforcer plus 15 playing next to Svedberg. 70 penalty minutes. So he is more of aggressive, but he definitely did good defensively. And then Alcock played 29 games early in the season with 5 assists. From a goaltending standpoint, Irwin had a .922 save percentage. Maybe we have a Vezina winner near the end of this franchise mode, but I really doubt it based on the games played. But Irwin with some fantastic numbers this year. Obviously, that means he's going to be really bad in the playoffs probably, though. But a .922 save percentage in this last season, which is a massive increase from last year where he had a .901. So Irwin is looking really, really good. 2.56 goals against average. Bergenheim had a .910, which is still good, but obviously not on the same level as Irwin. So we probably will be starting Irwin in the playoffs. Obviously, if he doesn't do good, though, Bergenheim still might get a chance at that starting job again. Irwin also had 3 assists, so a big year for Pete Irwin at the end of this franchise mode. All right, let's take a look at some stats around the league, see who led in points. Around the league, it was Darren Bates of the Colorado Avalanche, only won a 100-point player this season. That's kind of surprising. Also, I did say the Rangers were one of the best offensive teams. Well, Wallace and Guerin both up there, but they did miss the playoffs. So that's pretty insane. That's pretty insane. Most goals this season, Guerin is literally going to win a Richard again at the end of this franchise mode without making the playoffs. That's kind of insane, man. Kind of insane. I mean, I'm glad the Rangers aren't in the playoffs, but it's kind of insane just to see that. From a defensive standpoint, Punovs for Vegas, 68 points. Likely to be your Norris Trophy winner unless they give it to Langfeld due to plus-minus, but tough to say. Best goaltender in terms of wins, our former boy Esteban Nicholas, 39 wins, leads the league. Most shutouts is going to be 10 shutouts from this Chuck Yablonski guy. I don't think I've seen a goalie with 10 shutouts in a while in a franchise mode. So that's a pretty crazy year. 8 of them came in Calgary, and then he got dealt. Oh, that's right. He was part of that trade that we were mentioning about with Calgary and Colorado, I think. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, he had a .935 or .916 save percentage with 8 shutouts in Calgary. Gets dealt at the deadline. That's a lot of shutouts to have at the deadline to get dealt. And then he goes to Colorado, picks up 2 more, and posts his .935 save percentage despite a kind of losing record. So that's pretty insane. This guy's a really good goaltender, though. .919 career save percentage in the playoffs. Has won cups too, I think, right? Yeah, won a Stanley Cup. That's a pretty big goaltender for the Avs to bring in. Best save percentage by a starter is going to be House in, was it Anaheim? No, San Jose. 923 save percentage. Irwin is up there, but he didn't play as much games as House. Best goals against average by a starter is going to be Beta, but Beta only played 48 games. So if you're looking at 60-plus games, you're looking at Rick House again. So I feel like, though, Yablonski could get the Vezina based on the shutout count, but he did have like a 500 record almost, which is insane. So tough to say on that front. But Irwin definitely was one of the best goalies this season, I think. Best rookie in terms of points this year was Kadelakis of the Capitals. Savonin and Ginla up there as well. All right. So we have made the playoffs. Now comes the question, obviously, who are we facing in the playoffs, and do we have a chance to maybe be an underdog? Like I said, we were a wildcard team, but a wildcard team with 102 points. You look at the wildcard teams in the Western Conference, which are technically the Ducks and the Avs, I think, 94, 97 points. So we are by far the best wildcard team in the entire NHL. And does that mean we have a chance to be a kind of not necessarily a cheese team, but a team that gets overlooked because we're a wildcard team? So who are we playing in round one? We won't probably have home ice advantage because of this, but let's see who we're facing. The Florida Panthers. And this is where we kind of look like an underdog team in a sense, because technically Florida must have won the Atlantic Division, but you can see 41, 35, and 6 on the season. And you look at their individual stats, their offense was actually worse than ours. Goals against per game, we are both good defensive teams. They are very solid on the power play, apparently, and also on the penalty kill. So they have good special teams, but technically on paper, 5-on-5, we're a better team, which is insane. And if you look at our records, they were 41, 35, and 6. We are 49, 29, and 4. So we are a wildcard team, but they're a divisional winner, and that's the main reason why we don't have home ice advantage, even though technically we are by far the better team. Because if you look off like points percentage, 62.2%. And then if you go to the Atlantic Division, they won it with 53.7%. So all the Atlantic Division teams that made the playoffs shouldn't go far in the playoffs whatsoever. It should be a Metropolitan Division team that gets to the Eastern Conference Finals, in my opinion. If it's not, I would be absolutely surprised, but we definitely should be able to beat this Florida Panthers team based on that, even though we don't have home ice advantage, which is kind of funny to say. So let's take a look at their lines, and we'll take a look at who's been getting points for them. Florida has won, I think, a cup recently, though, so they could be a bit of an underdog. Like maybe the Atlantic Division will find a way to win a Stanley Cup, despite the Metro being so good. So here's what Florida's looking like, and they definitely have a solid-looking team, just skimming through it. But first line, Frederick Goddard, Topi Herme, and J.C. Burnett. Solid top line, of course. Second line, Skylar Quincy, a little bit weak, being only an 80, but he's playing next to Jack Watt and Ola Axelson. Third line has Cohane Doyle, as well as Russ Lindsay and Dwight Agostino. And a fourth line of Pekka Nielakainen, who used to play with us, of course, Jacques Desrosiers and Kirill Sadikov. So I know this team has won a cup, I'm pretty sure, in the last few years. Goddard, 2045-46, so it was only like 3 years ago that they won a cup. So they definitely could be an underdog team, just because they are technically worse than every team that made the playoffs almost in the Metro. So they could be an underdog, but at the same time, maybe we're good enough to beat them. Like, do they identify as a cheese team even though they have home ice advantage? Like, it's kind of weird to say, but that might be the case. I don't really even know. From a defensive standpoint, Dean Monroe with Braden Dundas. They also have Sawyer Bengoa, Frederick Alfredson, interesting name, Curtis Fitzgerald, and Sven Lundberg. So a little bit of a ragtag defense, but still not bad. And then from a goaltending standpoint, Keith Pronger, who we have seen simulate really good in franchise mode so far. And then also I think Vince Germain has been okay. But Keith Pronger, I think, won a Vezina? Yeah, he won a Vezina like 7 years ago. He won a Stanley Cup, of course, with this Florida team. He's had some pretty good numbers in the past, but he hasn't been, I guess, as good the last 4 years. But back in the day, like, he was posting like 915 save percentages. Had 1 year where he posted a 926. So he's been a long-time NHL goaltender. A lot of experience under his belt. Has had some solid playoff runs as well when they won the cup last, which was the only 2 years. They did make the playoffs last year. The year after they won the cup, they missed though, so that's an interesting one. But they had a 917 save percentage that year, or he did, I should say. So yeah, Keith Roberts is a good goaltender, and we definitely got to watch out for that. Jermaine, I don't really know how good of a goalie he is, but I don't expect us to see him much. He had a 937 save percentage this year. God damn, as a backup. That's really, really good. So maybe he's an underdog goalie too if he gets put in. But career in playoffs haven't been the best from goals against wise, but save percentage has been a little bit better. In terms of scratch players, they have Joel Andersons. They also do have Kent Estrada, which I remember this guy from somewhere. Might be the Rangers. Let's see. Oh, no, it was Columbus. Yeah, it was definitely our matchups with the Blue Jackets, I think, in the past. And then they also have Gavin Sawchuk. So, yeah, this Florida Panthers team is an interesting one. I would say they almost identify as a cheese team despite being the home ice team to start the series, which is interesting. So, I think we could beat them, but at the same time, I honestly have no idea what to expect. Just because us being a wildcard team, I feel like maybe that gives us a little bit of a psychological edge. But since their division was so weak, maybe everybody that's in that division has a higher chance. I don't really know. But it should be a good matchup, I think, regardless. Let's take a look at their player stats from the season as well, because I'm kind of curious on who is producing well for them. Because they were the worst offensive team out of the two of us. Rod regulation. Their best player had 71 points, that being Ola Axelsson. They look like they have good depth scoring, just like us, kind of. Yeah, like they don't really have like a super stud player picking up a ton of points, but we had 6 20 goal scorers. They have 5 20 goal scorers. Watt almost hit 20 goals, and they also do have a lot of guys on 10 plus goals. Only 2 of their forwards didn't post 10 goals or more, so yeah. This could be a pretty even matchup based on this alone. And then from a defensive standpoint, looks like some rough plus minuses on a couple of guys because I guess they give up a decent chunk of goals. Actually, no, they were a good defensive team, it said, during the season, and their goalie save percentages reflect that. So it's kind of weird to see a minus 14 and a minus 10 on that defensive core. But I guess it's just because they don't score enough that they have bad plus minuses. Like Bengoa was good plus minus wise, but you also have guys like Dundas who are really bad defensively, so they're a very weird group of a team. I think we could beat them, but at the same time we could get cheesed, even though I'd say technically we are definitely the better of the two teams, but maybe not fully in terms of depth. It's really tough to say. Like if I go to play next game right now, what does it say the rating comparison is? Because I don't usually take a look at this too often. I'm just kind of curious on what it says the ratings are like. So we're on 83, 80, 86. They are on 85, 81, 87. 85, 81, 87. So that means, by that logic, they're better than us offensively. They're better than us defensively and in goal. So they are technically the better of the two teams on paper. We had a much better season, though. Does that mean we are a cheese team? Or does it mean they are a cheese team? I don't really know. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of New York Islanders Franchise Mode. So in next episode, we will take it to the first round of the playoffs against the Florida Panthers as we look to extend the series a little bit longer. Hopefully, we can find a way to go on a good run this year since we are a wildcard team. Obviously, if we don't, though, that means the recap episode and like going through the record book and all that stuff will be relatively soon. But yeah, this has been an interesting series. Like I said, this entire 25 seasons we've done. Crazy results in terms of not winning a Stanley Cup yet. We've had some fun years, but it's been kind of disappointing when it comes to playoff time. So maybe by being a wild card team this year, maybe we could find a way to get a Stanley Cup in this last season. That'd be an awesome way to end this series. But if it doesn't happen, I'm just hoping that at least there's some fun stats to look at once we actually do get to the end. So let me think that below, and I'll see you guys next time.